welcome back. So, we were discussing about the different components of transactional analysis. Till now we discussed about the ego states and transactions and different kind of transactions as complementary, crossed, ulterior and gallows transaction. Let us continue with the third component of transactional analysis, that is strokes. Strokes is the unit of recognition during the transaction or communication, and that stroke can be positive or negative. So, strokes can be exchanged whenever two persons interact with each other and can be defined as any act implying recognition of another's presence. Now, this act of implying another person's presence can be not only of recognition of the other person's presence, but it can be actually the rejection of the presence of the other person. When we do not want the person to be there in a particular situation, we can give him or her different kind of verbal or non-verbal message for why he is here, or expressing your disliking for his presence. So, strokes can be positive or negative. That means these strokes are something that can be expressed or given or implied based on verbal or non-verbal cues as well. For example, if I say that you did a great job, this is actually a positive stroke. Now, this positive stroke can come only in words, that means verbally, or it can be non-verbally also with so much of recognition or appreciation or acknowledgement through one's eyes, or it can be both. That means we are patting our colleagues or co-workers back that you did a great job. So, this is a positive stroke. It can be a negative stroke as well, that why are you here? Because you are not liking the other person's presence in a particular situation and you want to reject the other person's presence, then there can be a negative stroke in a very verbal and non-verbal fashion. If it is through words or verbal, it is that why are you here? Why don't you continue with your job? You are wasting your time. So, this will give a message to the other person that he or she is not required to be there in a particular situation. This is a negative stroke. Or it can be non-verbal also, where the person through his or her eyes can give indication to the other person to leave that place immediately. So, these are the strokes which are units of recognition in transaction. Now, at the same time, strokes can also be positive and negative both. Why? Because there is a very specific reason that whenever we are in any social situation or even in any group situation, then it is not only that every time we need some recognition or acknowledgement, a person is also keen to have some feedback at the same time. Then only that stroke or transaction can be thought of to be complete. For example, you did a great job in spite of your less work experience in the field. Now, at the same time, encouragement is also going to the other person, and the person has also got the feedback that he needs to learn more skill or enhance his knowledge, skills and abilities to enhance his or her performance. So, in this kind of situation, both the strokes are there, positive and negative, acknowledgement or recognition for a good performance, and negative that in spite of not having good experience or complete experience, still you could do a great job. So, both the strokes are there, which actually completes the transaction, that this is how the feedback is also there and recognition or acknowledgement is also there. So, we can say that any transaction should have most of the time negative and positive stroke, which actually not only gives recognition, but at the same time it gives feedback in form of negative stroke, and these strokes can be in form of physical, verbal and non-verbal gestures between persons. So, this is another aspect or component of transactional analysis, that is strokes as a unit of recognition when two people are exchanging transactions. The other is, which is very important aspect of transactional analysis, that is life positions. Now, this component is completely based on childhood experiences. if you remember in our previous discussion that when we are talking about the ego states which are very much formed during or which are shaped completely based on childhood experiences, then life situations are also formed based on childhood experiences. Based on these childhood experiences, the person tries to maintain his or her self worth or esteem and also estimate the self worth or esteem of significant others. Now, significant others here means, as the term used by Eric Berne is, that there are some important people in our social world with whom we relate to them every now and then and in our daily life, that is our parents, our grandparents, our siblings, or our co-worker with whom we are working day and night. So, such people are termed as significant others in social psychology. So, according to Berne, there are 4 life positions that a person can hold, and holding a particular psychological position has profound implications for how an individual operationalize his or her life. That means, based on the childhood experiences, a person can create his own life script or life position, and based on that life position only the person tries to communicate or convey a message in the transaction, which follows the transactions in terms of any type of transaction, complementary, gallows, crossed or ulterior, and at the same time the strokes with which the person recognizes those transactions. So, in the process of growing up, people make basic assumptions about their self worth as well as about the worth of significant others in their environment, that environment right from childhood to the current state of their life. And this assumption about oneself and others is life position or life script. That means, what worth you have created for yourself and what worth has been created by you for the others. And these life positions or life scripts are permanent throughout an individual's life and are described in terms of okayness. That means, whatever life script has been created by the person considers it that situation as okay or appropriate or optimum for him or her. He or she will not try to move easily out of those life positions. So, according to Eric Berne, 4 life positions have been identified. I am okay, you are okay, I am okay, you are not okay, I am not okay, you are okay, and last is I am not okay and you are not okay. And all the 4 life positions or life scripts are completely based on lifetime experiences since childhood to the present state of an individual's life, and these positions are permanent because these are the positions from which the person tries to communicate or transact any message to the other person based on type of transaction and strokes. So, if I talk about the first life position, that is I am okay and you are okay, this is the most healthy position and the most ideal life position of an individual when the person feels good about himself and also feels good about the others and their competence. That means, the person perceives himself to be competent enough to manage his life, and at the same time the person also assess the other person or significant others to be competent enough to handle his life in a very significant manner. So, this is the most healthy life position, and this position can be described and can be created when the childhood experiences are very positive. The experiences are fun filled, are knowledgeable, and at the same time the self worth is also maintained. So, this is the most healthy life script of an individual's personality, that is I am okay and you are okay. And for this position only throughout the life the person strives that in what manner this healthy position can be maintained or achieved. The other is I am okay and you are not okay. Now, based on the childhood experiences, if the child is treated badly or abused, this may result a child with the feeling of helpless or powerless, and sometimes the child feels angry. That means, the child creates an angry position for himself, and every time the child feels good about himself, but he tries to find fault in the other person so that he can pose himself to be more competent. See the complexity of human behavior, that when the child is in itself in state of despair, the child has a tendency to prove himself to be right and the other person to be wrong, because that despair, state of despair is okay for him, because it has been created since childhood experiences. So, this is a life position which is termed as I am okay and you are not okay. So, under when we are talking about this life position, then under this position the child or person may move into a position where one feels good about himself, but see others as damaged, or continuously tries to prove himself that others are not okay and I am okay or competent. So, this is usually not a healthy position in an individual's life. Now, this position becomes permanent and the person finds absolutely fine to prove yourself every time, proving yourself to be right and proving every time proving the other person to be wrong. So, this is I am okay and you are not okay. The third position is I am not okay and you are not okay. So, if a child is treated badly or abused and receives messages that decrease his self worth or self esteem, then the child moves into the position where the person sees him herself as a weak partner in relationship and others in life and definitely better than themselves. That means the person actually underestimates his own self worth and tries to bring him down in his own life position, that I am not okay, maybe I am incompetent, I do not have those capabilities to handle my life in a very competent manner and the other person has better competency. It is other way around than life position 2. So, in this life position the person tries to underestimate his own life position while calling himself or proving himself to be a weak partner or an incompetent person to handle his life situation. So, this is again a very unhealthy lifestyle, but the difference is that this kind of life position is when the person holds this position will unconsciously accept abuse as okay. That means, if the child has been abused, then the child do not want to retaliate. In fact, the child absorbs this life position and consider it as okay to bear abuse. Whereas, in the second life position, the child sometimes tries to resist and continuously pose himself to be more competent and better in life. So, this is the third position, that is I am not okay and you are okay. That means, the person perceives the other person to be more competent than himself. And the last is I am not okay, you are not okay. Now, this kind of life position is complete state of despair, where the person fails to perceive or estimate his own competency in a positive direction, and at the same time the person also fails to perceive the other person or significant others as more competent than him or her. That means, the person is in a state of despair and the rest of the world is bad. That means, the person is perceiving bad in himself and also perceiving the whole environment as bad, and this is a state of hopelessness where the person tries not to find any hope for future support. In fact, the person tries to indulge in a state of despair where he finds difficulty in communication, where he finds difficulty in functioning appropriately, because the person's level of communication or way to transact or communicate the message is failed, because the perception about oneself and other is absolutely negative. So, these are the life positions, 4 life positions which are completely permanent in nature, and these are completely based or shaped, largely shaped by childhood experiences. So, these are the life positions which Eric Berne has identified based on childhood experiences and how an individual makes his life operational based on these life positions. So, ultimately it has been suggested by Eric Berne that of all the 4 states, definitely stage 1, that is I am okay and you are okay, is the most healthy life situation, and one must modify his or her behavior accordingly to strive or to reach the first stage of life position, that is I am okay and you are okay, where the perception about oneself and other is positive. Next comes benefits of transactional analysis. Now, since it is one of the most recent tool for interactive behavior, so there are certain benefits of transactional analysis which actually helps people in group dynamics. The first is that it provides better understanding of how people relate to each other, so that they may develop improved communication and interpersonal relationship. Again, if we go back to the transactions, that is complementary, crossed, gallows or ulterior, then in whatever situation we are transacting with the other person, if there is a clash or there is a crossed transaction, two people can analyze their level of transactions and can make efforts to enhance their communication. So, transaction analysis can identify in mapping the level or type of transaction that exists between two people and how two people can improve their communication for better transactions. The other is it provides fresh insights into the psychological makeup of the individual concerned. For example, in ulterior transaction, one person is operating with the parent or adult ego state, and the other person, that is the respondent, is interacting or transacting with the child ego state. So, it can create a scope for the person who is operating from adult or parent ego state, that why a person is operating with child ego state. So, this difference in the psychological makeup can be highlighted, and how it can be overcome or transformed to adult or parent ego state. That is the benefit of transactional analysis. It fosters group activities as brainstorming and conflict resolution, definitely transforming the other person from child to adult and parent ego state. It can actually be achieved when conflict resolution strategy can be implied or executed on the two people, so that the conflict can be resolved and people can come up with better ideas to enhance communication. That means more ideas can be expressed during the transaction. TA also helps in categorizing individual patterns of behavior, feeling and a way of thinking, which can be functional, that means beneficial, or dysfunctional, that is negative or counterproductive. That means if we continue to take the example of ulterior transaction or complementary, if the transaction is complementary, definitely the outcome is going to be very productive, more creativity and innovation can be fostered. But if in ulterior transaction is taking place between two people, then actually the transaction or communication becomes dysfunctional and the outcome is counterproductive, because there is conflict, there is quarrel. So, that transaction analysis can help us to decide that in what direction the transaction is going and what can be the consequence of that transaction, and how the transaction can be transformed to complementary transaction. The other benefit is that TA concentrates on the content of people's interactions with each other and helps in solving emotional problems. For example, if I say that any employee who is working or responding with child ego state, then what can be the reason? So, emotional state of an individual can be easily mapped through transactional analysis, and that can help to resolve emotional problems of employees or group members. That requires experience, that requires understanding of the life positions of a person with which he or she operates, and how those positions can be enhanced based on problem solving and emotional sharing between two people. The other benefit is that TA is considered how individuals interact with one another and how the ego states affect each set of transaction. Unproductive or counterproductive transactions were considered to be signs of ego state problems. Analyzing these transactions according to the person's individual development and history would enable the person to get better. That means, even the transaction has taken place, then it can help people to understand the ego states or the conscious level of human mind, that which is more dominating in a particular situation, whether the child ego state is more dominant, the parent or adult ego state. No matter what transaction is taking place, but everybody is transacting or communicating with particular ego state which is dominant in that particular situation. So, people can easily identify which ego state is dominant and which ego state is affecting which type of transaction. So, both ego states and transactions go parallel, which can help to understand human consciousness at a particular point of time and situation. And the last is that TA offers to study deviance, distress and dysfunctional patterns of behavior. Deviance, that behavioral patterns which are unacceptable in the society or any social group and how it can be rectified. Distressing, that any variable, any component in the environment that is causing stress to an individual's performance or competence can be handled very easily. And last is dysfunctional patterns of behavior, that behaviors which can help in contributing to achieve the common goal or achieve a complementary communication or transaction will help to foster productive behaviors or functional behaviors in group situation. So, these are the benefits of transactional analysis. So, we can say that transactional analysis is a popular tool, one of the popular to understand human relationships or interpersonal relationships. It has 4 components, that is ego states, transactions, strokes and life positions, and all those components work all together in synchronization to understand human behavior or group behavior of the members. So, we are done with this unit. Thank you so much. Let us meet in the next session. Thank you.